Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see. Well, good to, I guess, see you all. Although I don't see you, so um, hope everyone is doing well. Everyone's safe and comfortable. And so today we're going to really discuss a lot of details about our reopening plan and our reopening strategy, and um, what we have as a reopening packet that we're going to go through. And we just got done presenting this plan and this idea to DDS. We had to meet with the region, and we just did that this afternoon at 1 o'clock, and then that meeting went very well. And we didn't anticipate any real things coming out of that we might have missed in this plan. I think you'll see when you get to review it. It's very thorough, it's very in depth, and certainly covers a lot of different things. I know different people will look at different levels of it and really relate certain things more to their loved one. And so we really wanted to make sure we erred on the side of including everything at once and give people the appendix so that they can just find out what's vital to them and what's important to them, and ask the questions, and don't be afraid to ask questions through this, because we are being very cautious with this plan, with our plan to move forward. We're following all the guidelines that have been given to us from DPH, DDS, Mass Health, as well as all the universal precaution that the CDC has recommended, and we really tried to be ready and prepared for this, and approached it similar to how we approached the COVID center when we went into that. And so I think when we first discussed that, we sort of gave you an overview of what we were looking to do and how we wanted to do it. And that's what we're going to use this meeting for, is to give you that overview and tell you what our plans are. And then know that everything coming from this original plan will be in steps and in phases, so that we can try to build back the number of attendees that are coming to the program, and that we can get back to some new norm, whatever that may be. And so for us, there are still a lot of unanswered questions, and we'll highlight those at the end, or we'll talk about those more in depth. And so I assure you that if you don't get your question answered today, you certainly send it in to Greg, and we will try to address it today. But as far as going forward, once we get the answer to some of these questions, we will certainly come back with that answer, because usually when one person has a question, there's many more thinking it, or many more wondering the same thing. So Ted is going to join me today. We're going to build off of really what he talked about last week. So Greg, if you want to bring Ted in, and we can build off and start and sort of do a quick recap of where we left off last week. And again, this phased approach, this is what we're building towards, and this is the next phase of it for us, is reviewing the plan and describing a few of the documents that you see in it, the risk benefit tool, and just a few acknowledgements of risk that we all are going to share in. So, hey Ted, welcome. I think you're muted.
Ted, you're self-muted.
Suppose people want to hear me.
You never sounded so good. You never sounded so good.
Thanks.
So I joke, of course. So as I mentioned, as you just heard, I told them, that we just presented this plan to DDS, and so I think we should get right into it, and maybe just if you want to build off of where you left off last week, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So I was with Dan Harrison last week, and we gave a more general introduction to the reopening plan. We were answering some families' questions on it. And since that time, what I'm going to start off with are what are some of the updates this week. And for those of you who have asked for communication on the plan, I promise you it's coming. The plan, as Dan referenced it, we've reviewed it with DDS this afternoon. We are getting it to a point where before the week closes, it will be on our website, nupathinc.org. there will be a spotlight button where you can access the information that we're going to reference today. And also, if you have expressed an intent to return through the surveying, and I'll go through the surveying in just a second, but if you've already expressed an intent to return, you'll also going to be provided with a full copy of the plan. And that's going to be important because your initial expression of intent to return, we want to make sure it's a fully informed decision that you're making. And what we're going to be sharing with you in that, as you come to that point of expanding your intent to return to acknowledgement and confirmation of returning, is you're going to receive a packet that includes what you should expect, and it's going to go into great detail, step by step, of what you should expect upon returning. It's going to share our infection control plan. It's going to share the symptoms that are associated with doing self-checks, as well as the screening that's going to happen at the day programs. And then it's going to provide some fact sheets for your information. Dan mentioned another new development since last week, and that is the release. The state, our funding sources, have released what's called the risk benefit discussion tool. This is a process that, through the surveying, if you express an intent to return, you're then going to participate in a discussion with a designated NuPath supervisor, reviewing the benefits of returning as well as the risk of returning, so that, again, you can make a fully informed decision as to your return. Having said that, additional breaking news, I guess, for this week is on Thursday. The expectations that we're going to get into a little bit today are going to be fully detailed in a Zoom offering. If you go to nupathinc.org and you go to the virtual programming section, look on Thursday's schedule, and you will see that there's an offering at 1 p.m. and then a second offering of the same information at 6 p.m. for those who aren't available during the day. It's going to be titled Re-Entering the Day Program, and our program staff are going to review the contents of what you can expect upon return and answer any questions you may have from the programming side of things. So those are the developments this week. Things that we don't have answers to just yet. Transportation is still a barrier. A lot of people who have expressed an intent to return. The initial opening is going to rely upon those who are returning to provide transportation to and from the program. The transportation guidance is still in flux. Any guidance that's been issued at this point is prohibitive, basically turning a 15-passenger van into a 1-capacity van, if we were able to even do the transportation. So we're going to continue to work with DDS and the Executive Office of Health and Human Services on that transportation guidance. So those are the developments since last week, Dan, and we can get into some more details if you want to, jump into specific stuff.
Before we get into those details, maybe just I want to emphasize that point, or stress that point. Right now, what we're given approval for DDS is that anybody living at home whose family can get them to the program, you're able to open and serve. We also know that, you mentioned it last week, we have square footage requirement that we need to have for every individual returning, and that includes staff as well. And so there are some restrictions and some guidelines. So certainly it doesn't allow us to say open at 80% capacity or open right back into a new norm. But I think what those sort of guidelines and those limitations that we'll work within, we don't and see those as having an issue or having a problem. What we do realize, and we are sympathetic to those individuals that do want to get back to the program, or their family wants them, to get back to the program, who can't provide transportation or who live at a residential home and they're not prioritized in this phase 1. And we are very sympathetic to them. And so I would say that, if you are one of them and you're advocating for your son or daughter, when we do survey the residential homes of outside providers, that just really, reach out to your manager or director here at the program too, and emphasize the real need of wanting them to return, because as we get through this initial group or two, we will really start to have to prioritize. We don't have approval to do transportation for anyone that does not live with us right now currently. If we are going to be able to provide transportation for anyone that doesn't live with us right now, as Ted mentioned, HST has not given us those guidelines. Those aren't expected till mid-August. And so therefore we would work with the regions and try to see if we can assist in some way. So so those were it. I just want to emphasize those points. I know people in some emails I received, it was, how are we prioritizing people returning? How are you choosing who gets to return, who doesn't get to return? When we talk about, and we'll talk about it in a minute, the numbers of people that actually live at home that we serve, and that we don't need to put a priority, say, protocol in place or anything. We should be able to serve everyone that is on that list and wants to return. So,
and it'd probably be helpful.
Dig into some specifics.
Yeah, we can jump off with the surveying, that both of us have referenced, and just give a picture of how that's happening. So we were asked to prioritize, as Dan mentioned, we were asked to prioritize those people who are living with family, who are living independently at home or in a shared living situation. Those are the people with unpaid and possibly unstructured supports at home. So those were the priorities for this first phase. So what we did is we've reached out, although we haven't been able to connect with everyone, we have reached out to, made the efforts to reach out to everyone who is in that situation. And that's that intent to return. So what we're doing in that initial run is we're surveying readiness from the person's end to return, as well as when I say readiness, tolerance for wearing face coverings, social distancing, hand hygiene, and all of that. And as I mentioned last week, none of those 3 points that I just mentioned are make or break issues. It's just establishing the readiness and what supports the person is going to need upon returning. And then the transportation, the ability to get to the program, as Dan mentioned, without our ability to do the transportation. So that surveying, we're moving now to the, I guess you could call it informed consent of returning, that from those intents, what you're going to see this week is you're going to see a NuPath representative reach out to you and conduct what's called the risk benefit tool. And that's going to go over a series of questions that really get into the benefits, which as a provider, we are prepared to provide those benefits in our program and with engaging and structured programming on a daily basis, both the service and social needs, as well as the risks, because we're entering into this, that you're going to see in our infection control plan that there's been vigorous efforts to mitigate the risks. However, as we've talked about in these forums, this is a highly contagious illness, and we want to make sure it's safe for you to return. So those are the efforts that we're going into with this reopening plan. With that surveying, we will establish what schedule would best fit when we open. We're intending to open with regular hours, not at full capacity, as Dan mentioned, because there are, with social distancing, there are capacity limits that are going to be in place. But some providers are talking about only running half-day program and things like that. We are intending, at least in the development of our plan, to provide the services in the hours and days that were regularly scheduled and that meet the life patterns of everybody that we support. From that surveying, with that initial list, that first phase is also going to include those people who are living in NuPath group homes as well, to establish what their interest and intent to return is as well. Because as Dan mentioned, that is the one group that we are able to transport, that we've gotten confirmation that we're able to transport. So transportation does not prove as a barrier for them. From there, the next phase that we will be going into, if you're a family at home, we will be providing the same reentry packet to you, and we will be going through the risk benefit. That's not putting any pressure on a return date. That's just getting the conversation going so that, again, just like that first phase, that in that second phase, you're able to make an informed decision as to when it would be in the best interest to return. And then in the final phase, we're going to be surveying the group homes that are not in the NuPath network. And we're going to be working with the people in those homes to establish their desires. We'll be working with the residential providers because within their networks, there may be safety concerns and risk mitigation strategies they're trying to employ. And then most importantly, we're going to be working with the guardians and going through the risk benefit tool with the guardians in that phase as well, to establish an informed decision in the best interest of the person. So that's the surveying. That's getting into detail with the surveying. From there, you'll be able to come back. When we're open, we'll be providing the programming. It's going to look different, as we started to talk about last week. It is absolutely going to look different. Dan mentioned room capacities. We were able to see in a meeting last week, the program staff were able to share a live look behind the scenes in the programs, and that video is going to be available for all of our stakeholders to see in short order, so that you can get a feel also for what's going on in the programs and the setup. Rooms that would be able to, comfortably serve 15 people can serve 4 people, in the new socially distanced setup. So there are limitations, but what's not going to be limited is the programming that we're offering. We're going to be offering the same structured and engaging programming with a focus, again, on the individual service needs as well as the social needs that have been impacted by the isolation and self-quarantining that's been going on. Dan, in terms of specific areas, what do you think we should jump into?
Well, I think, I don't want to gloss over, and again, the plan is pretty thorough, but I don't want to gloss over. So we outlined our safety plan, our site preparation, staff training, stakeholder survey, and stakeholder, the risk benefit tool, which you talked about. And so I guess really what I just want to assure people is that we're taking every precaution that we took, when opening the COVID center, and all the recommendations from the CDC, and we're following all those guidelines and everything. And so none of the things that we might not highlight a specific area here on this call, but it certainly is something that will be addressed in the plan. And if you have questions on, we'll be able to answer and work through that guidance. And also what won't be outlined maybe in this call, but I thought would be important to mention is, we have stocked up again on PPE, and we are very well supplied for right now for our residential homes as well as the day facilities. And we've invested in the cleaning, the recommended cleaning CDC backpack sprays that are recommended to clean the space. And so all of those things, all those sort of things that I guess you've trusted us to be able to do, we continue to do, and putting, all started from, again, building off of that we're putting in place to have the day programs open. And so, just above and beyond, I feel like sometimes, where people get in trouble with COVID, and what we've seen happen is people relax a little bit, and that's when that creates the biggest risk. And we're really looking at, if we're ever at a point where we can relax, we'll relax, but right now is not our time to relax. And so therefore, the protocols that you see in place, some might look at and be that, that's pretty extensive. The example of if we do transport for anyone, that we're going to take temperatures before they get on the van. That's not a requirement right now. That's not what they're asking us to do. They're asking us to do a wellness check before they get on the van, but for the programs to take the temperatures. We are going to do it both times. We're going to do it, once we we'll meet the person at their house, and then once they come into the program. And so maybe Ted, we'll just build off of that, meaning person comes to the program, what they can expect. And like you said, we're going to make that video available, but person comes to the program, here's what they can expect. I don't know if you want to kick it off. I don't want to take some of that momentum.
So everyone's day, we're going to be asking everyone's day to really start the early detection and prevention. We're going to ask it to start at home. And so what you're going to receive in this re-entry packet is a symptom check. And that's not a sheet that you need to fill out every day, but it is a sheet that you need to go through each day. So we would ask you in the morning, before even heading over to the program, to take the temperature and also to go through the symptoms. Because if the person isn't feeling well or displaying any symptoms, they shouldn't come to the program that day. Our nursing certainly will be available to continue telehealth and help you coordinate and assess the symptoms. But in an abundance of caution, we would ask that anyone feeling ill or displaying symptoms that they stay home that day until they coordinate with the nursing through the telehealth to see exactly what's going on. When they arrive at the program, we're going to ask for patience. You've been patient while waiting for the programs to open. You've been patient while waiting for the actual plan to be shared. And again, as I promised, it will be shared this week. But we're going to ask for patience when you're dropping off at the program, because there's going to be a line, there's going to be a queue, and what you're going to see upon arrival is there'll be a tent at the entry, and there's going to be staff who are trained to do the initial screening. And what they're going to do is they're going to invite 2 people at a time to come to the tent. That gives us social distancing underneath the tent while still being in the shade. And what the staff are going to do at that point is they're going to go through the symptom check, both visually and verbally with the person or you if needed. And they're also going to take the temperature. If the person's symptom free, they're going to then help the person to hand sanitize, make sure they have their mask if it's appropriate for them, and head into the program. So that's how the day gets started. Now, if anyone, we would ask you again for patience. This is going to be a quick process for the screening, but please don't head off until the person has been cleared to enter the building, because if any symptoms appear, we want to make sure that we can return the person home so that they can rest and recover or get the follow-up assessments that they need. So that's going to be the drop-off procedure, essentially. When in the programming, we're going to, again, because we're only serving 2 people at a time to enter, we're going to give them time and the space to go to their program area socially distanced. What they're going to find in the program is it's going to look different. There's going to be floor directionals to make sure that, people aren't bumping into each other in the hallway, or there's not crowds in the hallway. They're going to see room capacities in their room. And again, as I say, this is all going to be different. One thing they are going to see is that we're going to have a staff person designated to support them through this. There's going to be a monitor in the program whose only responsibility throughout the day is supporting with these expectations and orienting to these expectations. They arrive at their program space. There's going to be some changes. The cafe is not going to be running. In abundance of caution, we've been asked to develop a food safety protocol, and we're going to ask that all meals come self-contained so that cooling can be maintained in their lunch cooler, and that all personal belongings can remain with them in their program space so that there's no cross-contamination. Program will be delivered as needed and in the same vibrant and meaningful way that it's always been delivered in those program spaces. They will see throughout the day staff cleaning. So we're going to have enhanced disinfecting going on. Dan mentioned the backpack sprayers. At the end of the day, so before arrival, the night before, the entire program environments are going to be fully disinfected. These are professional grade cleaning supplies. In order to ensure that we're able to do it nightly because the demand is so high, we didn't want to get into a situation where we were competing for a business's services. So rather than buying the business, we bought the supplies. We bought all of the equipment that the business has, and we've adjusted our janitorial schedule to be able to do the disinfecting at nighttime. Throughout the day, all high-touch surfaces are going to be sprayed and air-dried with disinfectant. the same grade, the same professional grade, safe, so that it's not toxic, but it's going to be what you're seeing in retail establishments and entertainment establishments, so that high touch areas are disinfected ongoing throughout the day. Hand sanitizing is going to be supported throughout the day unless it's contraindicated, that we're going to have intermittent hand sanitizing going on in addition to supporting people with hand hygiene at faucets with soap and water. In terms of other infection control, because I think the infection control is a big piece and it's often the part that you don't see, we're not going to be sharing materials. So for those activities that require materials, we're going to be purchasing and procuring materials that people can use for themselves. Any materials or equipment that is shared, like exercise equipment, will be disinfected after each usage. So these are kind of the unseen things that I want to assure that are happening throughout the day and on a daily basis. We will support if people cannot meet the expectations, meaning they're not prepared to wear a mask all day or social distancing is a challenge. Because of the way we have the program environment set up, we will be able to accommodate that. We want to make sure everybody that returns is safe, but also that those who need the services do not encounter a barrier because of the additional support that they may need. We covered early detection from the entry screening. The room setup is a 6-foot radius around all seating, so we're going to be supporting people. We will not be having visual barriers in those program environments. We will be promoting face coverings as well as the 6-foot radius with the social distancing to enable the socialization that everybody's been missing to continue in those program areas. I covered the sanitizing, and for those interested in more detail, the plan will go line by line on what is being covered with that. If somebody develops symptoms during the day, we're going to be asking that everybody who returns to provide a number that they're reachable at, essentially an emergency daytime number that we can reach you at. Because what we're going to be providing is a comfortable isolation area for the person. That if anybody develops symptoms or if symptoms are discovered after the person has already been cleared to enter the program, what we're going to be doing is supporting that person in a comfortable isolation area. This is not a closet without window. It is a program environment that's been designated for that purpose. The support is going to be overseen by a nursing department. And what we're going to make sure is that we're able to return the person home as soon as possible, because we don't want them uncomfortable. But we will make them as comfortable as we possibly can, and we will provide the support until they can return home. And our nursing department is going to oversee that support, but they're also going to oversee the follow-up, so that they will give you information upon return, that when the person's returning home, but they'll also follow up with you within 24 hours with a telehealth call to give any assistance with additional coordination of services or care or appointments that the person may need to be coordinated, but also to make sure you're getting the support you need and to coordinate the self-quarantine and return. For those who remain in the program after a symptom is discovered, we would first confirm the symptoms, and then we would vacate that program area and fully disinfect it before it goes into use again. Contact tracing, we're going to be maintaining rosters of every person who is congregating in a group together, even though they're going to be socially distanced, and we will be informing the care providers or families that there was symptoms discovered, so that that person can be monitored. Self-quarantine will not be mandated at that point unless otherwise indicated, because quarantine is recommended when there's a close contact exposure. Close contact is being within 6 feet of somebody for more than 10 minutes. The way our program environments are set up is we're going to be maintaining the socially distanced 6-foot radius at all times during the day.
So Ted, can we just maybe dive into that just a little bit here? Just because I know that was two questions at least that I received on that. you know, what will we do when someone tests positive? And I think you just talked about it, but really I want to emphasize it and make sure that people understand, you know, just
Yeah.
because someone goes home and there's suspected symptoms, you know, we are going to let you know that somebody went home, that there was a suspected symptoms, and we are waiting, you know, the answer if that person is tested positive. If that person tests positive, we again will communicate that to you. But what we're going to communicate is if your son or daughter was in, you know, that 10 to 15, you know, for a 10 to 15 minute period and is considered at risk. If they were just exposed to it, we will let you know that, but we will also try to help educate you a little bit better, which that doesn't mean they have to self-quarantine right away. And so,
And our nursing department, under Sharon's direction, is going to be coordinating all of that communication. So you're going to have access to the licensed professionals who will also be liaison with the Board of Health, who can give you the accurate information. We're going to be doing in the early detection. The contact tracing is going to be, we have a system established to do the contact tracing. And what we're going to be maintaining, not only are we going to be maintaining the roster at entry of when people arrive and depart from the program, but also in the individual program environments, we're going to be maintaining a roster, and we're going to have cohorts stay together on a daily basis and an hourly basis. So we're not going to be doing room transitions or mixing groups out throughout the day. That just invites cross-contamination if somebody's exposed. But with that detection, Sharon is going to be, what Sharon and her nursing team would do is, if a staff tests positive, and we will be gathering this information, even if symptoms aren't discovered at the program, somebody calls in sick and indicates that they've either experienced, they're presumed, or have tested positive for COVID, we would implement that contact tracing, and we would look at who was cohorting 2 days before the discovery, and then who was with the person at the time that symptoms appeared, so that we are covering that incubation period, as it's known as. And we'll be, you know, again, Sharon will be liaison with the Board of Health, but also with all of the families or care providers that are applicable for both the person who had the symptoms or tested positive, but also for those who were possibly exposed.
Good. And so, you know, a lot of this and the way we're going to really tighten up the system as we go forward, and the way we think we're going to be able to maybe just, you know, because there's a lot of contacting of people and a lot of you know, responsibility we're taking on by you entrusting us with your son or daughter or loved one in our program. And so as we move forward, we're going to look for better avenues to be able to get this communication out and to get this information out and to give you, you know, the numbers of the people to talk to in the nursing department, should you have any questions. And I think that that's important. We are going to try to run, you know, we certainly will not be doing community groups as we regularly do community groups. That will be on a limited basis. Ted mentioned the tent. We did have a permanent tent installed at our new Boston Street location. And that's the program we look to be able to open up first. I don't know what yet we will be doing with Westford and Martin Center. We will certainly continue to update people on those two programs. But as far as the community programs and everything, we will rely heavily on dogs barking in the background. We will rely heavily just on using Navigating Life to communicate with families. And so we were asked if, you know, if you do return, that if that is something you ask staff for help with.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Navigating Life plays a very important part in all of this. And, you know, there is work going on, not ready for release at this point, but we're looking at more and more ways where the Navigating Life tool can support. It's been invaluable during this time in our residential network for families to, you know, to be able to see what they usually would have seen in person or may have seen in person, as well as engage with their family members, as well as from an organizational perspective, as well as being able to monitor what's going on in the programs and to provide support that if we're noticing, some social distancing issues or anything like that, that we're able to provide that immediate feedback to the staff and the residents going on. That's akin to what we're going to be designating the staff role in the day programs of, to give, it's not policing the standards because people aren't doing something wrong. It's to ensure that the standards and expectations are being supported. And that's giving immediate feedback, that's giving training, that's giving support to those people who need, because the full execution of the elements in the infection control, that's where the safety lies. That's where the risk mitigation truly mitigates the risk that's inherent with this, with COVID. So.
Right. Good. Thank you for filling that in. One last thing I think maybe let's touch on, and then Greg can tell us if there's any questions or certainly add anything. The risk acknowledgement form, there's been a lot of conversation around the risk acknowledgement form and the general understanding of what this really means for families and for guardians. And so maybe do you want to talk a minute on that and then I'll fill in some details?
So we've been asked as part of the reopening guidance that was provided by Executive Office of Health and Human Services, not only to conduct the risk benefit discussion, but also to have guardians or those returning who don't have guardians to sign a risk acknowledgement. And in short order, what it basically says is that you understand the mitigation efforts that are being put in place with the day programming. However, day programming is congregate care. And with that, in the same way as going to a grocery store, going, I could go through a list, but going anywhere where there's other people, a number of other people, that there is some degree of inherent risk. The efforts that have been put into this infection control plan and the supports that are going to be in place are what we believe from the guidance are the best practices. We believe that our plan not only meets the guidance, but in many areas exceeds the guidance. And that's not at a detriment of the services that are going to be provided. However, that goes back to what I started with, is that it's an informed decision, that the intent to return is going to be an informed intent. Again, we acknowledge that there have been requests for additional communication, as well as providing with sharing plans, and we are going to be doing that in the two ways that I mentioned earlier. And the risk acknowledgement will basically just affirm that you understand the practices that we're putting in place, that we have done the risk benefit discussion, and that it is in the best interest of the person to return. And with that, as with any return to some semblance of normalcy, that there is some degree of inherent risk.
And thank you for going over that. And that's really what we're saying here is we're not absolving ourselves from doing what we need to do to make sure that people return to the safest environment possible, but there is risk. And we want you to make sure that you understand that risk, and everyone understands that risk. And DDS is requiring us, as Executive Office of Health and Human Services is requiring us to have that acknowledgement. And so, if you have questions on that, certainly when you see it and when you're talking to your contact within NuPath, or you do the risk benefits discussion, certainly ask those questions then. But I don't think it's going to be, I think at first asking anyone to sign a risk acknowledgement form, you certainly you would want to know that all your answers have been answered. And so please treat it like that too, that if you don't have all the answers that you're looking for, just ask us and we will provide those. So
Dan, just things that I think I missed earlier. One, when I was discussing the surveying, that if you have not been surveyed yet in terms of returning, and as I discussed, where we're at with the surveying is that we've reached out to those families or people living independently and those living with families or independent in the community. If for some reason you don't believe you've been surveyed, please, please, please reach out to the site director. We want to have that discussion with you. And if you, as Dan mentioned, as you look forward to the additional phases of as I laid out, that we will be going forward with after we complete that phase one of those living at home or independently with the risk benefit in the next couple of weeks, even if you're not intending to return at this point in time, and you want to go through that risk benefit tool discussion sooner than later, we are going to get to everybody, but you want to do that sooner than later, again, please reach out to your site director. And then finally, if you're in a group home and you feel that there's a immediate need for that person to be considered and have the discussion of returning, don't hesitate to reach out. The other plug that I want to make is we know that people want to return. We also know that for some people, there's going to be a time period where either they want to come back at a later date or they're not in a phase to come back. We are going to continue to offer the very best remote programming that we can. We continue to enhance it. It is not something we're ramping down, we're ramping it up so that we can deliver the best we can. We will provide if the person, if there's a barrier to participating because the person does not have access to a device where they can access a Zoom online forum, please reach out. Again, we're doing the telehealth calls weekly, or please reach out. You can reach out to me. You can email through this forum. We've been providing Kindle Fires for that, and we want to provide as much access as we can to our remote programming so that that's not a barrier. So.
Right. Good. So there's, we reviewed a lot of information, and I'm sure there's still going to be unanswered questions. So we'll open it up. We'll see if Greg has any questions. But then also, if parents or guardians or loved ones have questions, certainly, send those in, and we'll get those answered to the best of our ability. And this process is I acknowledge is not going as fast as some people would like it to be. I can tell you from where we are as a provider, for us, when we were on discussions and calls in early June, we certainly felt like if the guidance was given to us, we're probably just about where we would be right now. We could have got to at that point, but we have not received some of the clarity that we had hoped for from the Executive Office of Health and Human Services and DDS, and certainly they are apologetic and struggling to keep up with that guidance and trying to adapt to the limitations that they have, and so we understand that. But I think I thought it would be important to mention that that we're moving forward with this plan. We yet don't have a mechanism for getting paid for these services as we're setting this up and going forward. We certainly don't have a mechanism to get paid for any transportation or additional costs it's taken us to try to be ready for this new norm and stuff. I think what we're really responding to is to our stakeholders who feel that they need to get back to programming and get some semblance of normalcy and that inherent risk that is going to be taken, that we all take by maybe going to a restaurant right now or going out to a park and all that we want to be able to start enriching people's lives again and get there, and we'll do it with the good faith that DDS and Mass Health will come up with some structure that we can work within. So Greg, I don't know if you have any questions, any thoughts, any word?
Yeah, just a couple of questions. A couple of questions came in around dates, specific dates for the first phase of opening, and will it be the same at all locations? So that's one specific question that came in.
So I guess I would say no. I can say with certainty it will not be the same for each location. that's not the best way for us to go ahead and do that. What we're looking for is we're looking for some approval to be able to serve some of the individuals at a site where we don't have those numbers to return at another location. So if a day hab site at the Martin Center per se is approved there, but we're going to open, New Boston Street, are we able to serve that person that would have went to the Martin Center at New Boston Street? We don't have that clarity yet, so therefore I can't say we're definitely going to do that. But it would be our goal not to want to dive into something this in depth and thorough and this important and try to do 3 programs at once and dilute our resources and and not have the attention to detail that we want to have. And so the goal most likely will not be to do 3 programs at once. And then the second answer to that is, do we have a date? I can give a working date that we're working within, which would be the 1st of August. And so I don't, that could be bumped up a few days if we're able to get some of these things in place. That also may have to be pushed back a few days if we're not able to get some of the approvals we need. Because everything we are sharing with you, everything we are completing with families as far as the risk benefits discussion and the risk acknowledgement form, we then have to share with DDS and with Matt's Health and get their blessing as well. And so there are some phases that are out of our control, but we are doing every step that we can along the way to be ready to open as soon as we're ready, as soon as we can. So I know it's not necessarily the ideal answer that people wanted, but that's the time frame we're working within. I do know we did hear from one provider today on a call that his intention is to try to go forward next week with opening a program, and he acknowledges he doesn't have all the answers from DDS and from Mass Health, which he needs and stuff. And so we'll see if he's able to go ahead and do that to the extent for which he wants to. But please don't get lost in the fact that people are saying, this program is going back. They might be going back doing employment services, for which we've continued to do for those individuals who have jobs for quite some time now. So just we will, as soon as it is safe to get there, we will get there. I promise you. So, any other question, Greg?
Yeah, apparently just, we're singing the praises of Navigating Life and ask for more videos to be taken, and there's some specific activities that I'll share with you offline about what they want to see. And then the last one, my apologies if you addressed it, because we have a thunder shower here and I get disconnected for a moment, but it was talking about if a client or staff member tests positive in DayHab in an area, will everyone in the room get tested, especially if the son refuses to wear a mask?
So I guess, there is no easy answer for that, but the easy answer is it will be, certainly based on the exact situation that happened. So if people weren't within the 6-foot radius for the 10 to 15 minute period that it takes for a high risk exposure, then we would certainly leave it up to the family if they wanted to get them tested. Nursing will help them through that. We won't require that person to be tested. We'd ask that person to be monitored for symptoms. But if someone is within the close proximity, that 6-foot radius for that exposure period of 10 to 15 minutes, then that person needs to quarantine for the 14 days. And during that time frame, it would be my guess that they would probably get tested too, but they will be quarantining for 14 days because we are still working off that incubation period in time. Did I answer that correctly, Ted?
Yep.
Yeah. So again, we acknowledge that once we hear that a member, if someone did come back positive or a staff came back positive, we acknowledge that's going to be scary for everyone, and so we will make sure that we are as clear in our communication and err on the side of caution as far as what we recommend you doing for our staff and also for the individuals. Our goal would not be at all to not emphasize on caution and run the risk of having a greater outbreak at any one of our programs and put people's health at risk. That is not what we're looking to do here whatsoever. So, anything else, Greg?
That's it for questions, guys. Thank you. Nice job.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Dan will be back on Thursday for the Unity Forum. Ted, thank you very much for continuing to talk with me all day about this. And I hope everyone is safe and well. And again, if you have questions, certainly send them in. But thank you. Take care.